Hey everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. I am just dropping this special little clip into all the episodes. So, no matter what episode you're listening to, this is actually pretty current as of July 2024. I wanted to come on here and just say a big thank you to Earworthy because the Life Shift podcast was just named the best overall podcast of the year in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. And you've probably seen some articles written about the Life Shift podcast before, written by Earworthy. And now he is launching from his online publication, he is launching these yearly winners of independent podcast awards. And these are specifically for indie podcasters. We are those that wear all the hats. We create the show. Some people write the show. We're producers, sound engineers. We troubleshoot all the tech. We do any kind of research if we need to. We host the shows. We distribute the shows. We do all the things that relate to our shows because we love it. And it's so nice to see my name in a list with some other amazing podcasts like Multispective, which won Best Life Lessons Podcast. Salad with a Side of Fries won Best Health Podcast. Bippity Boppity Business won Best Business Advice Podcast. And there are so many more. And so I just want to come on here and say thank you to Earworthy for not only doing these awards every year and just honoring some of us indie podcasters that sometimes feel like we're just shouting into the void, but we're not. We're just doing what brings us joy, and hopefully through that work it brings other people joy. In my case, for the Life Shift, I hope that each episode finds the ears that needed to hear it the most so that they feel a little less alone in their circumstance. But also, Earworthy writes all these amazing publications pretty much weekly, every week, every weekday, I should say, where he writes on Blogger, Medium, Substack, Tumblr, Vocal, Many Stories, and for other places. And he really just highlights the independent podcasters. So thank you, Frank, for everything you do with Earworthy and for recognizing all of us in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. If you'd like to read more, please head to medium.com/EAR hyphen WORTHY. Thanks again and enjoy this episode. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Hello, my friends. This is the Life Shift podcast, and I am here with a special guest today, Heidi Kirby.
Hello.
Hello. And so I always like to tell you how we know each other, and this one, you can blame Heidi for the Life Shift podcast.
Yay!
Or you can thank her. I would imagine that maybe there's a thanks for some of you.
I would think most people would thank you, but okay.
Or thank you. Yeah, so in spring of 2020, as you have listened, I'm getting a pandemic master's degree right now, is what I'm calling it. And I typically, every semester, we had to take, a core class, and then we had to take an elective. And I always chose a class that scared me as my elective. And so I opted to take the art of podcasting with Heidi. And that was the one that scared me. And I think it scared me because it was such an unknown entity for me. And so going through the class, we were required to, create 2 interview style podcasts. Of course, by the time the class was over, I had 8 of these recorded and ready to go and launched. So thank you for pushing me to do that.
Yes. And I mean, in fairness, it could have been a hypothetical podcast. I mean, the assignment really was like, you didn't have to create a real one, but I think it's great that you did. And I think it's so like, you're a professor, so like this is what it's all about, right? Like, this is the hope when you teach a class, is that somebody finds their passion and enjoys it and latches onto it and then does something else outside of the class, right?
And here we are. And your episode is somewhere in the middle, but if you're listening to this, there's like episodes, there's a lot more coming after this. And I'm going to vow to not have seasons, and I'm going to continue
Nice.
recording episodes with people because I think these stories are so powerful. And what I'm finding is that people are connecting to stories that aren't necessarily in line or parallel with their own, right? They're finding these little moments in everyone's stories that connect with them deeply, even though it's a completely different situation. And I think that the piece that you're going to share today, or your story and your pivotal moment, I think a lot of people will relate to it, but I think also they'll learn from where you are now. So, to get us started, maybe you can give us a little bit of kind of who you are and what life was like before that pivotal moment, and then we'll kind of go into it.
Yeah. So I am very much just a Midwestern gal, right? I was born when my parents met at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And, my dad's senior year was the year I was born. And then we slowly made our way up towards Cleveland. And that's where I've been for as long as I can remember. So, grew up with both parents, two younger sisters in an extremely religious household, which may or may not come into conversation today. So I figured I might want to mention it. And there were some really great parts of my life that I gained from religion and some really not great parts too. Grew up as a gifted kid.
Me too.
Yeah, all the AP classes, all throughout school, all the honors classes, and B stood for bad, right? Like that was not an option.
Was that self-imposed?
Somewhat, but also like from parents and teachers and, just adults in general. But yeah, somewhat self-imposed. Definitely a self-imposed perfectionist.
That's me.
Yes. Yeah. And very hard on myself. And I see it in my kiddo now. It's hard. It's hard to like see that, right? So when it was finally time for me to go off to college, being Miss Perfect, Miss Religious, Miss Churchgoer really went out the window, right? And I was like, ooh, I can be a party girl, right? Like I can really have fun. Nobody's here to like keep an eye on me or call my mom and tell her what I'm up to. And so I can just do whatever I want. And so I did. I embraced the party life and it was fun. And I, my roommate, who I'm still friends with to this day, we just lived by the motto. She was a gifted kid too, right? We were in the honors college together. So we lived by the motto, work hard, play hard. And like Thursday, Friday nights, we'd be like, all right, we have 3 hours. We are not going to talk on AOL Instant Messenger to anyone. We are not going to get distracted, get food, whatever. We are just going to buckle down and work on homework, and then we're going to go out and party. And that's what we did. And so then like, still partied quite a bit in my early 20s, but like everybody else was kind of slowing down and I wasn't. And then I met my now husband, and we were together for a year and a half, 2 years, and then we got married. And that leads us right up to the pivotal moment.
Well, before you go there, I'm wondering if did you have other people that you grew up around that were super kind of religious households that did similar things when they went away? Because I mean, we see it in movies all the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We see people like the preacher's daughter. She goes hard, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I'm from a small-ish town. Like I'm from the suburbs of Cleveland. And so when I was in my early 20s, it was not uncommon over the summers when everybody was home from college to be partying with a bunch of other people you used to go to church with. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think I think it's something to be said about, I mean, this is going to be my own personal view on organized religion, but something that is very confining and something that has a lot of rules and restrictions, that when you are in that for so long and you get that first taste of, wait, I don't have to follow any rule but what the rules are for myself that I've set. You kind of go to 100 instead of, just the
Yes.
normal ease into it.
Right. I mean, my friends, like, my roommate, right? She grew up in a household where drinking was normal. You drank at parties. Like, it was there. It wasn't like forbidden. It wasn't like they were all crazy drunk people, but it was like it was part of the culture, right? And she was not nearly as crazy as I was. So,
Because
it,
your house was very restrictive.
yes. Yeah. I mean, everyone that we went to church with was kind of the same way. It was just very like there were a lot of rules, a lot of rules.
I'm picturing Footloose right now. I don't know if that's kind of in my mind, is like there's no dancing in this
Yes.
town.
Yeah.
And now why? So that's
Right.
probably, like you were exploring, why couldn't I do this forever, or why did I never see people do this? So, but it got a little out of hand. Is that where we're heading?
It's not so much that it got out of hand, because like when I was in college everyone was doing it, right? Like, and everyone was on my level. It's just everyone else started to grow up and started to be able to like have a drink with dinner, or have like alcohol that they didn't like, right? And like, oh, I don't like that, I don't want it. And like my brain didn't work that way. I didn't have an off switch, right? So just like figuring out that it was a way to deal with situations, it was a way to deal with emotions, it was a way to deal with my anxiety, kind of made it into like this like self-medication nightmare, right? That, and just like the constant cycle of like being mad that I wasn't normal, right? Quote unquote, that I couldn't like turn it off once I started, but then eventually not caring, right? And like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll just do it anyway.
Right. And then did you regret, like, that cycle kept going, like, so you regretted the night before?
Oh my God. Yeah, it was horrible. Like every day with a hangover was half hangover, half guilt, right? Of like, wow, I acted like an idiot compared to everyone else, right?
Yeah, man, I think as an addiction, I think it's very similar. I was talking to someone the other day about someone that's facing like anxiety, high anxiety, like someone that's diagnosed with high anxiety or someone that's diagnosed with depression, right? In those, and I've dealt with depression, maybe not diagnosed that, but when you're in that height of it, you almost feel like it's easier to stay in it and continue that state that you're in. So I can kind of relate in that sense, not being addicted to a substance, but being addicted to a feeling. Do you think it was more
Yeah.
the drink, or was it more
Oh, at that point, it was more the
masking?
feeling. It was more masking just like every negative emotion that I had like accumulated from age 18 through age like 24, right? Like everything. And I do have diagnosed anxiety, and it was a way to like, I'm an introvert also, I don't like being out in crowds of people, around a bunch of people, socializing, whatever. And it was a way to be able to do that, right? Like, we live in such an extroverted society, it's not friendly for introverts. And it helped me to be able to, well, what I thought was being social, which was probably more being annoying, but
I mean, I get that. And I think there are a lot of people that drink or use alcohol of some sort to kind of be able to be the performative person that they think society wants them to be. And so growing up, I'm sure you like heard of college, right? And like that's where people have a great time.
yeah, it's like Animal House.
Right, exactly. And the only way I can do it, because I'm so anxious and don't love being around crowds of people, is to find something that makes me feel like something else,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So everyone else is kind of addressing, they can have a glass of wine with dinner
Yeah.
and then it's done. And you weren't feeling that way. What was the point in which you were like, this has to stop? Or was it just a gradual thing?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky compared to a lot of the people I met when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous that I had what they call a high bottom, because people talk about they hit rock bottom, right? And like a lot of times
That's
it's like
interesting.
death or near death or like yeah, like some really like as messed up as you can imagine. That's like people's rock bottom. But for
Yeah.
me, it was I went to a party. I got way too drunk, which is a very common occurrence. I got into a fight with my new, like a month before husband, like my brand new husband, got into a fight with him and said, I'm going to call my parents and have them come pick me up because we were in my hometown at the time. And my phone was dead. So I wasn't thinking that was a problem. I just started walking home. I'm a 10-minute drive from home. So I don't know what I was thinking I was doing. I was also walking down the street when there was a sidewalk. There was that too. And I ended up getting picked up by a cop. Now, he was super nice. He just drove me home, like just gave me a ride home, made sure I was safe. Like I said, I'm from a small town, so it wasn't like I
Right.
wasn't in any trouble. It was just like this drunk girl shouldn't be walking on the street by herself. And other than that, I wasn't doing anything wrong, or so he just drove me home. But in the time that it took for him to drive me home, my husband had gone back to my parents' house. Nobody knew where I was. Everybody was worried and pissed and everything else. And then the cop car shows up with me in it. And my dad and my husband were furious, of course, right? Like, of course. And I was being super defiant, right? I didn't want to be told, at the time in the moment, I was like, I didn't get in any trouble. What's the big deal? Right? Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, they
It's
didn't arrest me.
free Uber, right? Like it's fine. Everything's fine, guys. I don't know what you're making such a big deal about. And my dad said to me, he's like, you have a problem and you need to figure it out. And like, that was it. And then I went up to bed. And the next morning I was like, my dad doesn't really interfere in my life. He doesn't really give me a ton of opinion. Like, he doesn't really tell me what to do, right? Like, since I've been an adult, he just kind of like, he'll, if I ask for advice, he'll give it, right? But like, he doesn't really interject his opinions very much. So if he is telling me there's a problem, right, then there's probably a problem. And I think the other thing too was that it was so very close to when I had gotten married that I was like, I can't be a wife like this. Like, this isn't like, this is not what I thought was going to be my marriage when I got married, right? So the next morning, my husband had a softball game and he was playing softball and I was in the car because I felt so awful from the night before that I didn't even want to be out in the sun. And so I was in the car looking up how to get sober, right? And the next day I went to an AA meeting and the rest is history.
Wow. It's interesting. Do you think your trigger was more you didn't want to disappoint other people, or was it more for yourself?
I think it was at first that I didn't want to disappoint other people, right? Like the gifted kid, the church kid in me, right, was like, has always been, still to this day, it's something I'm working on, has always been very much a people pleaser. And I had tried everything, right? Like I had counted drinks, but then I would just like stop counting, or I'd tried every system. I'd tried having people cut me off. I'd tried a drink and then a water and a drink and then a water, but I still ended up drunk at my niece's third birthday party, right? Like, and nobody else was, right? Like, and so it was just those things. I guess I just didn't know how to stop until that moment where it was like, oh, I could have gotten in really big trouble, like this is a good stopping point, right? And then
Yeah.
like was able to then just kind of like use that as a jumping point to actually stop.
Before that, did you realize the effect of what you were doing on other people? Or was this the first kind of like, oh,
There was a time right before this, like weeks before this. I don't remember exactly when, but I think it was between when I married my husband and when I got sober. So like there was literally like 45 days between those two events. He was like, "You're going to have to pick someday between me and alcohol." And like I literally told him, I was like, "Please don't do that because it's not going to end how you want it to." And like I knew that I couldn't, if he gave me the ultimatum, that I couldn't pick him over alcohol in that moment. So knowing that too and being like, I don't want to be alone and drunk for the rest of my life, right?
yeah. And I think as you were talking about, kind of masking things and showing up at different events and no one else was drunk and you were that person that was, it's almost like you were trying to escape from your real existence and facing,
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And until someone like pops that bubble, like maybe your husband kind of, he was probably like trying to squeeze the bubble and it wasn't happening, but then when your dad was like pink,
Right.
like this is
That's all it
hurting
takes. Yeah.
more than just you. I mean, I get it, because I think even in the cases like talking about depression or those kind of things, how everything feels like so much on you and you don't realize what it's doing to everyone else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what happens is you end up, if you were triggered by, doing that by someone else, it ends up being the most beneficial to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and in AA, one of the things that you do is you find your higher power, right? And like that's what you cling to when you're having a rough day or you're having a rough time. And as a reformed evangelical kid who very much is now atheist, I was like, I don't have a higher, like, what am I going to cling to? And, it was really just all the people who believed in me, right? Like all the people who believed that I could be better.
And not wanting to, going back to the perfectionism, but not wanting to let them down
Yeah,
because they really stood by you
right.
in the times when they probably
Yeah.
shouldn't have, right?
Yeah, my friends lovingly and kind of cringingly looking back on it referred to me as Hurricane Heidi. Well, and that was the other thing, like it was hard at first because nobody else wanted to admit that I had a problem. Like some of my best party friends, right? Like, "Oh, you'll be fine. Like you just need a little break and then we can start again." Or I would get the question, "Are you going to stop drinking forever?" I would be like, yeah, that's the goal, you know. But I'd have the friends that are like, well, you're not an alcoholic. You're just, whatever box they wanted to put me in that made them feel better about, whether it was enabling me or going out with me or having fun with me or, I think a lot of it was just people were like, what is she going to be like when she's not drinking? Because they didn't really know that side of me. So,
Right. Yeah. Because if you were fully functioning drunk most of the time,
yeah,
who are you?
right.
Was that the hardest part? Did you know who you were until after? I mean, did you know who you were
No,
before? Or
no.
yeah.
So that's the craziest part was immediately there's like a piece. There's like a cool, I can do this. Like life is good. I'm not waking up with a hangover anymore. Like this is awesome. And then you realize that you've spent 6.5, 7 years just like shoving stuff down, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that,
Right.
you know, breakups, bad situations, just stupid shit that you did, opportunities you missed because you were drinking, right? Like just all of it. That all comes like flooding. And it's really hard. That's typically around the time where like people relapse, right? And
And you did not.
no, I did not.
That's
Thank
great.
goodness. I still to this day will have nightmares about it, right? Like I will still have a nightmare that I drank on accident, on purpose. Like I accidentally pick up someone's drink, right? That was a common one in the early days before you realize if you have a sip of alcohol like on accident, that doesn't ruin your sobriety date. So the combination of trying to like deal with all of those emotions, but also the fear of relapsing because of all of it. It's so much. There was a brief period of time where I was really depressed and suicidal. It was luckily pretty short lived, but because all these emotions came at once, and I was like, now I have to deal with all of this stuff, right? I have to deal with all these feelings that I haven't felt in so long and figure out who the hell am I? Because I've had this Hurricane Heidi persona for so long that it's like, well, who am I? And before that, I had like the gifted Christian kid persona for so long that I didn't want that back, right? Like I didn't want to go back to, so it was like I'm a brand new person. What do I do with this? Like who am I?
Yeah. Do you think being a perfectionist helped you stay sober?
Yes. 100%. So I yes, I had an app on my phone that had like the countdown of how long I'd been sober, like to minutes and seconds. And like knowing that just one little drink would erase that, like grade grubbers, right? Like you want that 4.25. The 4.0 is not good enough, right? So I absolutely think that helped. And just like the the thing is for me, like with, so first of all, I tried to stop smoking cigarettes when I stopped drinking, which was a huge mistake. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. Quit one thing at a time and start with the worst thing first. Like,
Yeah.
so I picked smoking back up pretty quickly, thank goodness, because I probably would have like relapsed on both if I had
right.
kept doing that. And like, I ended up smoking for a couple more years. But like, when I quit smoking cigarettes, it was the same thing. It was like, I quit immediately and then never did it again. When I quit cold turkey, there was a time where I tried to like do a vape pen instead and that didn't work and it was a whole thing. But
that's a perfectionist quality. I'm the same way. It's like all or nothing. It's like
yes,
this podcast, right?
yes, yeah. So
yeah,
it's like the stuff that like if you don't want it to be your vice, you have to just cut it out completely. Otherwise, it will consume your life, right?
Well, and I think people can relate to that in simple terms, even as like someone cutting out sugar. Or
Yes,
you can't just
yeah.
like, I'll just have one cookie.
Right.
Then you're going to want a cookie. You're going to want a cookie
Right.
every day. But if you don't have any cookies, eventually you won't have that craving.
Right. Yes, it's the same.
This was how many years ago we're talking? Because this episode will be coming out shortly after an anniversary.
My 9-year anniversary. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. And since then, you've found yourself?
Oh my gosh. Since then, there have been so many other life shifts that have happened,
Yeah.
right? But this was kind of like the first domino. So,
well, and that's probably the thing. You wouldn't have had all these other life shifts, probably.
correct. 1000%.
Yeah.
So, about 2.5 years after I got sober, when I had really started to like put the emotional pieces back together, I talked to a therapist.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined AA and then left AA subsequently because it was a little too much like religion for me. And so I think that was another really good step that I took for myself. It gave me all the tools that I needed to stay sober, but then like I was like, all right, let me leave like the congregation aspect of it behind. Let's see, it was probably around when I first stopped drinking that I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so, in that first couple of years after I stopped drinking, I found out that I couldn't have kids. I tried in the early days to take some fertility drugs and they didn't work. And I just kind of went around and had been told by like 3 different OBGYNs that I couldn't have kids. And 2.5 years after I got sober, I went on a crash diet because as a perfectionist, that's what I do. I do yo-yo diets, and I lost some weight, and it was a significant amount. And as I like to say, I fell pregnant because I'd been told for so long that I couldn't have a kid, that like I wasn't using protection with my husband. Like, I just assumed that it wasn't possible. And so I got pregnant, and I never would have been able to do that if I was not sober, because I don't think I wouldn't have lost the weight, right? Like I wouldn't have been disciplined enough to lose weight. And I like, I just drinking and your hormones, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. And so I had a baby, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because of it, I was teaching as an adjunct professor at like 4 or 5 different colleges doing the adjunct shuffle. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be at work teaching a class when my kid is in daycare and then have a break for 2 hours while I'm still paying for daycare. Like I don't get paid enough as an adjunct for that, right? So that's when I decided to start a PhD program. I never would have been able to be dedicated enough to do a PhD program if I was still drinking. And then I got into the corporate world, right? Like, and so just all of these things kept happening. I started, I don't know, I got into the corporate world. I decided I wanted to be in like corporate leadership. My husband and I had bought our first house before my son was born. We just bought our second house a couple years ago. And then I really just started like figuring out where I fit and who I was, and that I really liked, I don't like crowds. I am an introvert, but I like people, and I like helping people grow, and I like hearing people's stories like you, and teaching, and, that kind of thing. And so just like really leaning into that passion. Something I struggled a lot with was, like, who am I deep down, right?
Yeah.
That was something that for a while I was just like, I don't even know what I believe, what I don't believe, like who I am at the core. And it was, I don't even remember when, but at some point in the journey, I came across the archives of an old website where I had a diary online when I was like 16, right? I don't know if you ever did anything
like a live journal.
It wasn't live journal. I'm not gonna. It was a Zanga. Do you remember Zanga?
Oh yeah, and yeah,
Same
I have
thing.
my
Same
GeoCities
thing,
site.
right? Yeah, right. Like in that, from that era, where like you would go and you just like, dear diary, here's all the stuff I did today, right? And it was from like my teenage years, and I found it, and I went back and I was like reading through, because I was just, I was just curious, right? But what I noticed pretty quickly was that the person that I was back then, with just like this, like just wanting to help people and wanting to be there for people and respecting people's stories and encouraging people to be genuine, like that was still me back then. And it was like a really great moment for me to be like, no, I still am the same person I always have been. It's just I've allowed all this other stuff to define me instead of just being me, right?
Yeah, it was like an affirmation that like you're
Yeah.
on the right path. I mean, in your story, after your moment of just quitting cold turkey, shows that you were curating the life that you wanted.
Yeah.
Versus, if we link it back to organized religion, you're often told what you're supposed to want. right? You're told things that you need to do to be accepted or to gain the love that you should be getting. And so
Right.
how nice it is to then be in a space where you can create that for yourself.
Right. That was another pivotal moment, was when I realized that this whole time, like with religion, it gives us a way to blame everything, good and bad,
Mm-hmm.
on someone
Mm-hmm.
else, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, it was, this bad thing happened because it was God's will, or this good thing happened because it was God's blessing. And when you put that onus on yourself instead, you make less mistakes because you have to blame it on yourself, but you become so much more limitless. There were so many things that I never thought I would be able to do, that when I just stopped limiting myself and just went, sure, maybe I'll try it. Like my podcast, right? Like, sure,
Right.
let me just try this. And then it becomes successful, right? That you're just like, if I would have just stayed in my box and, done what I was supposed to do, I never would have done that.
It's interesting to make that connection, or to call organized religion kind of, it's almost like a crutch, right? In a way that you can use as a blame. And in my story and in other areas, I've mentioned how, and my mom died when I was 8. And so it took me like 20 years or so to fully grieve her loss. But in that time period, I can relate to the idea of something being a crutch, because that was
Yeah.
my crutch. I didn't
Yeah.
have the religion aspect, but if something went wrong, it was because my mom died. If something went right, it was because I had the opportunity because my mom died.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so everything became that. And until I was able to take the responsibility for myself, you're right, I wasn't able to really create any kind of life that mattered, right? Because it
Right.
was just, you're living in this excuse bubble.
Right. For sure. Well, and then when you take it a step further too, which I've only recently started doing, like this is such a process, right? Like it never ends, right? Like finding yourself and figuring out who you are, like I don't think it ever ends our whole lives, right? But, you know, taking it a step further and realizing, I'd been told my whole life, like, you're not the center of attention, right? And you're not supposed to be, right? Between religion and, just being a good person, right? Like, you're supposed to decentralize yourself. And then as you get older, you hear all these things about like self care, and you're like, what? I'm not supposed to take care of myself. I'm supposed to take care of everyone else first. But like, when you take that responsibility for yourself a step further and turn it into self care, and then realize that, like, oh my God, I can take care of so many more people when I'm taken care of first.
I mean, you go back, someone, I think the episode that came out a couple weeks ago, as this comes out, maybe in June, she talked about, it's the whole analogy as a parent of putting your mask on first. If you're in an
Yes.
airplane and you need
Yes.
oxygen, you put yours on first,
Right.
and then you can help others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also that's a product of our generation too. So growing up, society was not, society was not all about self-care, self-awareness.
Right. Yes.
Right. I feel like,
Yes.
and I've talked about this with other people, it was very much, you graduate high school, then you go to college, then you get a good job, then you get married, then you have kids, and then your kid, and that was, it was like a check mark,
Right, right. There's so
whether you wanted
many,
to or not.
yeah, expectations, right? Yeah, there were no alternatives, right? Like, and I'm in the process of like starting a side hustle that will hopefully turn into a business right now. And like I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, I just feel like somebody's going to figure out I'm just playing house, and I felt like that with other things that I've done too. And he's like, it's not that it's just that you're doing something that's not expected, right? Like, did either of your parents have a side hustle and start a business? I'm like, God, no. Like, they worked at the same place for years and years and years. And he's like, well, you're stepping out of what's expected. Like, of course, it's going to be a little uncomfortable. But I think that for me, and I'm sure that you can relate with your podcast, that when I'm super passionate about it and then it also makes me really nervous, I know it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
something good, right? Like, I know that's
Yeah.
a good combination.
Yeah. That's how I relate with that. I relate with that a lot of things. And I also relate to the idea of, is someone going to find out? That imposter
Yeah.
syndrome. I think you probably have some of that as well. It's
Yeah.
like, do I belong here?
Right.
But with all that I've read about imposter syndrome, it usually happens to the people that can be successful.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like we're in a good place. I don't know. I'm just trusting the research.
Right. It usually doesn't happen to like narcissists and like the bad guys, right?
Right. That probably are faking it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What a journey. What do you think that, like, the best thing that you've discovered since you've been sober about yourself? What is...
That's a good question. That I'm still fun.
That you can still have fun.
Yeah, that I'm still really fun and that people still want to be around me and that all my friends didn't disappear. I was afraid that I was like, oh my gosh, most of my friends are drinking friends. They're not going to want to be here and be my friends anymore if I'm not drinking. And, that was the case with some. That was the case with a few of them, but the majority, no, not at
But were
all.
they friends? I mean,
Right,
really, at the end of the day.
exactly. Right. Were they really a friend? The other thing that's not necessarily about me, but it's probably been one of my favorite moments was when my niece, who was little when I got sober, made just this offhanded comment. I had to leave the room because I got emotional, but she just made this offhanded comment. She's like, Aunt Heidi, I've never seen you drink. And I realized at that moment that she didn't remember drunk me at all. And I was so thrilled because she's my oldest niece, right? And my son has never seen me drunk. My other nieces and nephews have never seen me drunk. And that is like of all the things, of all the accomplishments, that's my favorite. And the fact that even my oldest nieces don't remember it, like that's probably my favorite thing.
Because as a perfectionist, if we go back to that, part of you probably thinks, oh, so-and-so remembers when I did this.
Yes.
So-and-so remembers this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even your husband, you're still with your husband, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I hope
yeah.
now that we're recording.
Absolutely.
But,
yes.
I mean, he's seen both sides of you.
Yeah.
And so that's probably also scary for a perfectionist because he knows, like...
Yeah, it is. It's maybe less scary with him than it is with like people who don't know me as well, who like I'm always like, are they gonna bring something up? Or, like
right.
when people reminisce about why Heidi doesn't drink anymore, that used to really bother me at first, right? But then I just kind of like took ownership of it. And when people bring up stories now, I just go, oh yeah, that's reason 1496 why I don't drink anymore, and it just has become, I'm to the point now where it's almost been a decade, right? Like I've now spent longer sober than I did drinking. So it's now more awkward for other people when I talk about it than for me to talk about it. And it's a really nice place to be, to be able to laugh and joke. And
it's part of your story. Like, it just is part of your life. And you're probably a different person now than you would have been had you never started drinking, right?
Sure.
So there are things that you learn from terrible situations or from things that are, don't necessarily go the way that everyone else expects them to. So I think part of that, what you said it, you own it, like you own that narrative, and it just is, it's part of your life. And so many people, I think, try to pretend that they're like this perfect figurine on the wall that like unbreakable, but it's like, no, that's what makes us cool. Like all these flaws that we've had in our life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you just like line up all of your failures and you're like, here's all the stuff that I messed up. And look at me now. Like, I turned out okay, right? Like, that's something I really like to talk about and I'm really open about, is like all the things that I've ever failed, right? Like, I failed my PhD comps, right? Like, I think it's such a small percentage of people that get their PhD that I imagine it must be an even smaller percentage who have failed their comps. So I feel like I'm in a pretty elite group having to take. I bet a lot of people cannot say that they've taken their PhD comprehensive exams twice.
Right. You're in that elite group.
Right.
No, I love when people tell me things that they did wrong, because the flip side of that is, what did you learn from that?
Right.
Right? Like,
absolutely.
And I look at people, and it's funny because, I grew up in a divorced household, and then my mom died, and then my dad got married a few times. And I look at other people that they stayed in the same house until they left for college, and their parents are happily married. I'm like, that's so boring, right? Like, I moved to 3 different states and 100 different houses and things like that. And that kind of made me who I am. And stepping into that authenticity, I can see that those moments are what created this version of me.
Right.
And like, once you're finally okay with that, everything else is much cooler.
Yeah.
So I like to end these episodes, I don't know if you've heard, but I like to end the episodes with questions that are not really answerable, but they're fun to ask. So if you could go back to the Heidi that was walking in the street,
yes,
with what you know now, what would you say to her? Or could you say anything to her?
Oh, I would just leave her alone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't change a thing. Yeah. I feel like everything happened exactly how it was supposed to, right?
Yep. I think that's a good answer, because I feel the same way about all the bad moments in my life, is that at this point, knowing what I know now and knowing where that journey took me and where you are compared to where you were, you got to do it. I talked to someone else the other day about their addiction, and they had the same answer.
Yeah.
Is like, you got to hit bottom.
Yeah.
Like or high bottom, whatever you called it, which is a new term for me. Lucky you. I think it's great. I think what I learned from you, or what was reaffirmed in your story, is that your journey is going to take you through all these places, and it's what you do with the moments that are given to you that really matter in the end, right? You're a thriving individual right here, despite the parts that you were masking.
And obviously it wasn't just me. Like, you have to have a good support system. You have to really have people who believe in you. Without my husband, like, I wouldn't have been able to do any of it. I'm super grateful that he even married me, knowing what a mess I was, right? Like, and still, like, he didn't know I was going to get sober a month into our marriage, right? Like, I mean, he lucked out, but he couldn't have known that. Like, he was invested, right? So that's really, he was instrumental. So,
and it's interesting too to think of it from that perspective too, because he married someone different than who you eventually showed him who you were. Right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's good to have a great community around you, but I mean, you got to toot your own horn here, because you did it.
Yes. Yeah.
You did it. And a lot of people struggle. And so, however long that time takes, it seems to be worth it.
It absolutely is worth it. Yeah. And when people are like, do you ever think you'll drink again? I'm like, oh, hell no.
No. Like, look what I have. Look what I have in my life right now.
What can it give me that I don't already have?
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you being a part of this podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you for forcing me to do it, even though you didn't really force me to do it. I just did it. And I would be remiss if we didn't say that you have a podcast as well called The BLOC, BLOC podcast. And you want to just say a little bit what you talk about on there?
Yeah, so the BLOC stands for Building Learning and Organizational Culture, and it's all about learning and development and creating a culture of learning at your organization.
And that's what she does in her every day in their corporate life. And then she has this podcast, which inspired the rest of us in the class. So check it out if that's your space, and you will hear a familiar voice. And I thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.